Good evening. I am calling the Wednesday, November the 10th, 2021 Economic Development Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. tonight. Tonight's Economic Development Commission meeting will be held hybrid for the public using Zoom. Commission members and staff will be participating in the meeting in person. As chair, I will be leading the Economic Development Commission meeting, and the public is welcome to participate when invited throughout the meeting. Members of the public may attend the meeting by joining us on Zoom at https://zoom.us/join and typing in meeting ID number 924-9491-1305. Once you are logged into the meeting, please use the chat feature to tell the moderator which item you used to speak to. You may also call into the meeting by dialing 651-372-8299 and enter meeting ID 924-9491-1305. Now on to the agenda. First, we will adopt the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda?
No changes from staff.
Okay. Seeing that there are no changes, the agenda is adopted. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda? It's not adopted yet, but may I have a motion? So moved by Commissioner Schmidt. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a second by Commissioner LaFavor, and I don't know why I want to call you something else tonight. Not bad.
It's been a long day, I'm used to it.
It is. Okay, so we have adopted the agenda. Next on our meeting tonight is the approval of the September 8, 2021 Economic Development Commission meeting minutes. Are there any questions or any feedback from the commission about the committee meeting minutes from September the 8th? No. Okay. No changes?
No changes from staff.
Okay. If there aren't any changes, can I have a commissioner move to adopt the?
So moved.
Okay. Commissioner Schmidt, is there a second?
Awesome.
Second. By Al Anderson. Thank you. Third on the agenda is the oath of office, and we have I'm sorry, give me a moment. Beth Weber, who will be administering the oath of office to our new commissioner. Beth?
That's fine. Please raise your right hand.
Recording in progress.
I, Ed Scislow, do solemnly swear
I, Ed Scislow, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Minnesota,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully will discharge the duties as a member of the Burnsville Economic Development Commission
and will faithfully discharge the duties as a member of the Burnsville Economic Development Commission of the city of Burnsville
in the County of Dakota and state of Minnesota,
in the county of Dakota and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. Next up on the agenda is the 2021 Residential and Business Survey results. We have with us Carissa Larson, the Director of Communications and Community Engagement for the City of Burnsville, and she will provide a presentation of that item and an overview and background of the report.
Oh, good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me here tonight. As you heard, my name is Carissa Larson. I am the Communications and Community Engagement Director for the City of Burnsville. Our department has coordinated residential and business surveys every year for, not every year, every 4 years, but we've done it every cycle for quite a while now. And our department looked at the survey for 2020, and we actually pushed it back a little while because there was a lot happening in the world in 2020, and we were afraid of some survey fatigue. People were getting a lot of surveys about COVID and about the election. We decided we would probably be better off not being in that mix and pushed back to 2021. We also decided to reimagine the survey a little bit. We had done the same number of questions for several cycles, and decided that we needed to make sure we were keeping up with the times, asking questions that were reflective of the things that were important to our community, asking questions that were reflective of the things that were important to our work, and take just a kind of a different look at what we were doing. So the results that you'll see today are a little different. If you've seen results in previous years, there are some different questions, a different approach to some of those things. We conduct these surveys to learn what's important to the community, allow a variety of voices to be heard. Surveys help guide our work. They give us a sense of what we're doing well as city staff, what we could do better, and what we can prioritize. Again, what are those things that are important to the community that we should be focusing our efforts? So I'm not going to go through the whole survey. I'm going to give you just kind of some brief information on a couple of the slides that I thought would be useful for you tonight, but Beth and I can provide further information after this meeting if you'd like. So this cycle we coordinated with Cobalt Community Research. They are a survey firm out of Michigan. They helped us write the survey, make sure we weren't accidentally bringing in biased questions, leading questions. They conducted a random sample mail and online survey. So first they mailed the survey and some letters to a random sample of residents and businesses. Those folks were able to respond via mail or online using a unique ID number. The online survey was also open to the wider community as a whole. So everybody in the community could give their thoughts and opinions, and those results were reported to us, but they're not a part of the scientific sample reporting. So the numbers that I'll give you tonight are from the scientific sample, not from the community as a whole. So they sent the surveys to 2,000 residents and 1,800 businesses. Out of those we got responses from 365 residents, which equals out to be plus or minus 5.1% margin of error with a confidence level of 95%. The business survey received 207 responses, which is a plus or minus 6.1% margin of error with a confidence level of 95%. We also had 175 residents and 4 businesses who did that online survey but were not a part of the statistical sample. Both of these results, both for the residential and business survey, provide us with a good reflection of the population overall. So our consultant was very confident that we were receiving good results out of our survey. Everyone always wants to know, well, what's the end result? So we put that first, just so that you're not left wondering. The city outperformed benchmarks, most benchmarks in our national and regional areas where we were able to compare. We received benchmarks in our residential survey, which I'll go over in a minute. We did not receive benchmarks in the business survey because we don't have benchmarks available for the business survey. But we were consistently outperforming other public sector benchmarks as well. So we were very, very proud of our comparison to benchmarks. Because we reimagined this survey, we do not have one-to-one benchmarks of our previous surveys, if that makes sense, because we asked different questions, we asked them in a different manner. So looking at these national and regional benchmarks gives us a good measure of where we're at, even though our questions were new and revamped this year. The big takeaway is that residents and businesses value the services that we as a city provide to the community. The biggest factors in satisfaction, the reasons why people say that they live, work, play in Burnsville, the reasons that they would recommend Burnsville to their friends and family. On the residential side was local government management, taxes, parks and recreation amenities, our sustainability efforts, and Burnsville's vision. Business side was actually fairly similar. Local government management and the vision both popped up there as well. The regulatory environment, the collaborative environment, and our location were standouts for businesses. We asked a couple of questions that were open-ended. What do you like about Burnsville? What do you think that we could improve? So these results came from those open-ended questions versus the numerical answers people were provided in the other questions. So people love the parks and trails. They like the outdoor amenities that we provide. They also like the access. They get the benefits of living in a big city while also living in a smaller community. They can kind of have the best of both worlds. Enhancements that they would like to see, they'd like to see some ratings improved for our school system, the drinking water, and roads. Although here in the Midwest, our consultant assured me that roads pop up in almost every survey he does. So this is where we start to get into the scores. Now, as you read these are not represented as a percentage of people who said, this particular amenity was good, bad, or otherwise. These are given as scores rather than percentages. So if you think of this as this received a 70 out of 100, right, versus it received 70% of people who said something. That's how these are laid out. So they're a little different than a lot of surveys that we do. The benchmarks are what you see here in some of the multicolors. So Burnsville is the last in every question in the blue. And then you get the green are national benchmarks for different populations. And then the red and pink are Midwest benchmarks. So here's where you can start to see where we have met or exceeded benchmarks from across the country and in the Midwest. This particular slide, this community image, we like to think of this as our brand. This is what people think about Burnsville. Are we a safe place to live? Are we an enjoyable place to live? Are we good for families or older adults? Good place to have a business. What stands out here to me, in particular, the last question, the last column over there, a place that is inclusive and celebrates diversity. We way outperformed the benchmarks in those areas. Some other ones that stand out are safe place to bike and walk, great place for older adults and children. So kind of across the board here, we see people believe that Burnsville is a good place to live. This question is similar, but a little bit more focused on experiences with services, in particular amenities. So some of these were amenities that we as staff kind of talked about and decided that we'd like to just get some more information on, and that's why they came up, or again, like I said, particular services. Standouts here include our overall fire service, law enforcement, and our parks and recreation offerings. This chart is a little different. So we asked a variety of questions, and our consultant kind of wrapped those up into topics. So the list that you see here, overall fire service, overall public schools, transportation infrastructure, each of those had 5 or 6 questions associated with it, and he kind of wrapped those up into one score for that overall topic and placed them on this scatter chart. These scatter charts help us determine where are the places that we should really focus our efforts, because they are drivers of engagement and satisfaction. So we could place efforts in a lot of different areas, and maybe it doesn't move the needle on what people think about their community. This helps us really hone in on what is important. So the top left quadrant, they received high scores, but are not necessarily a strong relationship to satisfaction. So for instance, a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, overall fire service, what do you mean that's not a driver of satisfaction? It's because a lot of people expect their community to have a well-run fire service, right? So it's not a reason why you would move to a city. It's something you kind of expect. Our consultant likens it to buying a car. You expect it to have a steering wheel, right? You don't buy a car because it has a particular steering wheel, but if it didn't have one, then all of a sudden you would be concerned, right? So these things in the top left are not things we should ignore. They're things we should continue to do well on, because if they suddenly slide, then they will become drivers. The top right are high scores with a strong relationship to satisfaction. So these are our strengths to build on. These are the places where we are already doing well, and we want to make sure that we continue to focus there, because they are what people say to their friends. Hey, did you know Burnsville is really great in this area? The lower left, they're lower scores, but they're not the drivers of satisfaction. They don't make or break, people wanting to be in Burnsville. That lower right are lower scores with a stronger relationship to satisfaction. So these are areas to improve or prioritize or look into a little bit deeper. Some of the areas that stand out here in our strengths to build on quadrant include city manager. No, wait, I'm sorry. I went to the business survey in my paper. I had to do bigger paper because sometimes I cannot see so well on a screen. So let's see. Number 42 there is city management. 71, the light green, is parks. 78, sustainability. 89 is the city's vision, which stands out to me, the fact that it's a driver of satisfaction, considering it's a relatively new vision for the city. So it's resonating with the community, which I think is great. And taxes, which kind of slipped just below that line. I had mentioned taxes earlier in our drivers of satisfaction. Even though it's below that line, our consultant said it is still a much higher score for taxes than he sees in other survey results. So for us, again, it's kind of that strength to build on. It's something that we're doing better than others, and we want to keep improving there. Let's see. In city management, we asked a number of questions just to get at this notion of, well, what do you like about the services that city staff provide for you? And what we see here is faith in our service to answer questions, provide professional responses, be receptive to our residents' needs. This is, we kind of blew all of these benchmarks out of the water, which is really a point of pride for us. That last one there does not have benchmarks because it was a custom question to Burnsville, fair and respectful interaction with residents. So we don't have anything to benchmark that against. But again, all of these are very high scores and well above benchmarks. The council's vision, again, no benchmarks here because it's customized to Burnsville. But as I said before, this surprised me because when we went into this, I figured this will give us a nice baseline and then we'll see over the years that it'll grow. But I was pleased to see that people know about the vision and strategic priorities. It's resonating with them. And in my mind, this means that it's good guidance for our work and communicating the progress of that work. We can ground that in some of this language and let residents know where we're going. Some questions about local schools were on the survey. There were some softer scores here, but I know that economic development is working with schools as part of their strategic plan. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that. So again, this kind of just gives us our own benchmark to look at over the years as that strategic plan comes more into play. And there could be a lot of reasons for soft scores. I'll talk a little bit about performance versus perception near to the end of the presentation here. I know that the school districts are doing a lot for their families, so this soft scores by no means mean that they're not doing anything, right? It's reason for us to ask more questions is really what this is. We asked a couple questions about economic health. And again, at or above benchmarks here, people believe that we have a good economy here in Burnsville. What really stands out, obviously, at the end there is being a healthcare community. That is something people believe we do very well. Over to the business survey now. A similar question, open-ended question about what does Burnsville do well to attract businesses? What are some things people would like to see? Some similar themes in terms of convenience, access to surrounding areas and amenities. Businesses like feeling involved in the community, and they like the affordability of Burnsville. Roads come up again here, again, Midwest. Some concerns a little bit about safety and crime, and taxes, although no one likes to pay taxes, so it's not really, doesn't surprise me. Again, we get this scatter chart, these drivers of satisfaction. So where we focus our strengths building is in that upper right, and our areas to improve in that lower right to make sure that we are meeting those drivers for our community. Again, here we see the vision come up again at number 76. And number 60, overall city management, comes up again as well for drivers of satisfaction for our business community. 68, again, just ekes just below that line, but I think is still a strength, is that overall regulatory environment that businesses believe is a satisfaction for them, and something that is right there on being satisfied with it. Here in the business survey, like I said, we don't get benchmarks, unfortunately, but we will use these as our own benchmarks in the future as we continue to ask these questions. But very similar, asking about the city management in terms of what services businesses feel they receive from the city. Again, ability to answer questions, are staff trustworthy, level of knowledge. All of those things come through as being satisfied with their interactions with city staff. Council's vision, again, is resonating with the business community, so something to keep in mind, again, as we move forward with communicating our progress on initiatives with the business community, we can use this language to help ground our work. Our collaborative environment, again, some softer scores here, but again, a variety of reasons why that could be. I'm sure COVID played a part in this. This survey was sent out to the business community in February of 2021. So we were all kind of coming off the shock of everything that happened in 2020. And, this is, again, an area where the economic development strategic plan will really show us some growth, I think, over the next few years as we actively work toward many of these areas. The regulatory environment is something that the business community is satisfied with. I know that has been a focus of our commissions and our councils and staff over the past few years, and I think that shows in these scores that it's something that people are satisfied with, and are, the work is resonating with people. Economic health, again, very similar to before. People are satisfied with our overall economic health. We see some higher scores in stability of property taxes, the availability of jobs, overall the belief that it is a good economic environment to do business. So what do we do with all of this information is really kind of the important question here. We can get all this data, and it does us no good if we don't actively work towards something. So one of the things that Beth and I can provide you later is a packet of crosstabs. These crosstabs are really the heart of the research to help us plan and act, because this breaks down those scores, not only question by question, but in terms of demographics. And as you can see here, so each column is a different question. That overall score in the first line, the first row in blue there, kind of wraps up all of the demographics. It's weighted by ethnicity to better reflect the population. And then each row underneath each of those gray rows shows different demographic breakdowns. So what we want to do is actually read the shading of each column going down. So when we as staff, when we take a look at these crosstabs, if we notice that a particular column is checkered reds and pinks and blues, we know then that demographics are having different experiences with that particular service. So areas to dive deeper and to get, to have more community conversations and be able to say, what are you experiencing, you in particular, in this, demographic, or as this length of residency or whatever, how is it that you are experiencing this service? And learn a little bit more about why we have some of those differences. When we have a consistent column of blues or reds or pinks or whatever it may be, then we know that score is consistent regardless of demographics. So their experiences are consistent across the board. Still a good idea probably to ask some deeper questions of folks, right? It's always a great idea to engage the community in deeper conversations, but at least we know we don't have people who are in our community who are experiencing our services differently. One of the questions that we ask ourselves as we look at each of these areas is, if they're a softer score, do we have a performance issue or do we have a perception gap? So in a performance issue, we need to actually look at what we're doing and address it with some kind of improvement plan. Even when performance improves, there may still be this lag of people perceiving that it is still a problem. So then we have to figure out how to fix that perception, right? And that's where we continue to communicate our progress and our achievements with folks, address it with other strategies that help people kind of adjust their perception of a particular issue. It is very easy, it is human nature to say it must be a perception issue. We are doing everything, it must be a perception issue. And it is true that we are all striving to be the best for our community. But I am encouraging everybody who I present to do some reflection when we have softer scores and determine, is it truly a perception or a performance issue? And kind of regardless of which one it is, work through a plan to figure out how we can ensure that we are truly doing everything, whether it is to improve performance or to improve that perception, so that the next time we do this survey, we see those scores creep up and we know that we're doing the right things, we're moving in the right direction. So how do we do that, those next steps? How do we do that work? This is actually a set of steps that our consultant has laid out and encourages folks to do. So the first part of action is to measure. That's what this survey helped us do initially, right? We got a baseline measurement that we can look later and say, okay, here's where we were and here's where we are now. Next is to break into teams and analyze the results. Brainstorm a little bit about why respondents may have answered the way they did, although recognizing that we're not the experts in why our community said what they said. So if we can't, figure out what that is, then we go to validating, which is holding community conversations, asking deeper questions, determining if some of those things that we believed our community was saying are accurate and true. This can be done in formal ways and informal ways. It could be formal focus groups, it could be more formal surveys, it could be casual surveys or casual conversations at a community event. We can do this a variety of ways, and probably better if we do it a variety of ways, so that we're reaching multiple people in multiple ways. We want to make sure that staff are trained and skilled in the tools that they need to go have these conversations in order to effectively implement once we get that feedback. Putting plans into action after you have that feedback from the community, and then remeasuring, which is what we'll do again in 4 years to determine, are those action steps that we took, improving some of those scores or keeping those drivers, those scores that were high, keeping them high so that we're not accidentally dropping things that we should continue to prioritize. So that was the really quick overview of the community survey. Like I said, there are many more questions, so we'll make sure that we get you more information. But with just what I've presented tonight, I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any. Yes?
When you look at the demographics of both the residents and the businesses, are there any underrepresented groups?
So our consultant weighted the responses by ethnicity, so it's hard for, I'd have to ask him, it's hard for me to see in the results because he's weighted them, so he's made it so that the results that I see reflect our overall population. So I'd have to ask him to look back at the raw data and figure out if anybody was underrepresented, but I'm happy to do that, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to look at because, whether the consultant is deriving something, but really, was there a big enough response in certain ethnic areas.
Yep.
And even age demographics and things like that, I'm not just picking on ethnicity.
Yeah.
To see if there are any weak spots.
Yep, absolutely. I'm happy to ask him and I'll report back.
I think this is a great report. I mean, I think we should feel really good about the information that's being presented. I will say that we saw the school systems, and we're working to help and support the school systems as best we can, and the school system's working hard to improve itself, and they deserve some credit for their efforts for that. One thing that did surprise me is that Burnsville looked like it was rated or considered a safe city, safe environment, but at night it wasn't. And then I noticed that there was for people that are relatively new to Burnsville, were voicing some concern about street lighting. Can you explain what's behind all that, and are the two correlated at all?
I'm not sure that I could speak to why the community said what they said there. I think that, and I would hate to speak for our engineering department, but I know that streetlights are one thing that they continuously look at in terms of where and how much, and does it provide, adequate safety measures and things like that. So I would hate to say yes or no on if they're connected. I do know that streetlights are one thing that are always looked at. In terms of a safe place to bike and walk at night, that, I don't know our crime numbers, but I would guess that is probably, I'm gonna guess it's probably a perception issue. Because I say that with some hesitancy only because I don't have the crime numbers, in my head. But, I think that there is naturally some hesitation as night falls, right? And the things that I have heard from our police department don't suggest to me that there is a bigger issue at night, stand out from anything else, right? It is certainly possible that they are connected, but I don't know that we would have enough data one way or the other to show for sure that a lack of streetlights, is causing that response.
Thank you.
Was there any narrative or fill in the blank sections that allowed residents or business owners to put in some additional feedback on why they might have put something?
So a couple of questions had some, tell us what,
Yeah.
And then there was a question at the end that just said, what else do you want to tell us? So we do have, I think there's 9 or 10 pages of comments for the business survey and 40-some pages of comments for the residential survey that were, for those open-ended questions. So I'm happy to provide those as well. In some cases, people did explain, and in others, they took that opportunity to just tell us things that they wanted to tell us that weren't a part of the survey, so.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Commissioner Anderson?
The probably one of the lowest scoring areas was water. And where I live, the people around where I live don't feel like the water is, that much of a problem. But it seems like there are parts of Burnsville where the water is really a problem. And in theory, it's all mixed together, but I don't think it is. So I encourage you to have the water department, I know the city council is, questioning that, but
Yes.
really look in depth at what parts of the city really have the problems with water.
Yep, that is something I just earlier this week, I had a meeting with our Public Works Department to try to brainstorm what are our next steps to dive deeper into that question, and how can we determine if there are perhaps some hot spots in the city, where things are a bigger issue. So I know that they're taking it seriously. We don't have a full action plan yet, but I know it's a priority for them as well.
Yeah. Just want to check if there are any members of the public who want to weigh in or had any questions.
There are not via Zoom.
Okay,
Great, thank you so much.
thank you. We appreciate that presentation. It was very informative. Next on the agenda, we have Jenny Faulkner, the Community Development Director, and City Planner Sarah Madden. That will provide a presentation on the item of Economic Development Strategic Plan, Goal Number 4, Housing Policies and Programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. this is exciting, I think, to bring to you, and I hope you feel the same way. This is something we've been working on for the last couple of years. And I brought some graphics, especially for maybe our newer commissioners, and want to explain this on this first slide, like, how did we get here, right? A little bit of history. In 2018, the City Council adopted its first ever Economic Development Strategic Plan, and this group was a primary driver and gave a lot of input to that. Out of that, there are 5 goals, and we can email this to anybody who wants this, and it's on the webpage. But there are 5 goals that we've been working on since then in community development to make headway in our economic development areas. Goal number 4 is what we're talking about tonight, is to enhance and build awareness around existing housing and commercial programs and develop new programs as appropriate. We have some programs, but really not a lot of our own, and we're very good at sharing other people's programs, right? So where are those gaps? So in 2019, council put away some funds in the budget for 2020 and 2021 towards home rehab that would fill a gap that's above what Community Development Block Grants provide, CDBG, which is administered by the Dakota County CDA. There's quite a long waiting list for that program, which tells us there's a lot of need in the community for these types of housing programs. So we did budget for that, and then COVID came, and it was stop, let's not spend any money, right? Because we didn't quite know what was gonna happen. So that's where we've been for the last 2 years. We've had budgeted funds, but we haven't put together a program because we weren't sure kind of where we were at in the world of city finances. So we do know where we're at today. We're sitting pretty good. We got some federal funds, and so we're gonna proceed with these programs. And so going back to our housing strategy plan that we worked on it was adopted in early this year, there's 4 objectives that came out of this. Remember, this is the work towards goal number 4 of our larger plan. So those 4 objectives that came out of this group were to create a direct lending program for housing maintenance and improvements, market housing initiatives and our resources, provide technical assistance and our education to our homeowners, and to promote energy efficiency and sustainability. So we're making headway on some of these. We started on the last one, a partnership with the Center for Energy and Environment doing home energy audits. We started that earlier this year. That's gone very well. And they also do a lot of home loan programs, home energy efficiency loans, home rehab programs. They administer that for a lot of cities. So they are a potential partner for us when we talk about some of these programs tonight to help us administer. So we have 3 programs that we're gonna share with you tonight, get your input on and direction, and we plan to bundle these and bring these to the City Council in December for their input and roll these out into 2022. So we're really looking for your input and ideas, see if we missed anything. Many of you are in the business world, you know, what did we miss? How is this gonna play out? So we are open to good questions. So the first one is kind of a unique program, and we've dubbed it Code Cash. And this is to deal with people that have property maintenance issues. So we spend quite a bit of time on code enforcement, and we would rather spend that time helping people improve their homes or helping them fix the problem rather than sending an inspector out 2 or 3 times, sending them to court, especially for small things that don't cost much. Maybe they don't have the wherewithal, they don't know how, they don't have the money, they're old, they're handicapped, whatever the situation may be. It seems like there's a quick fix here, and how can we get to a better outcome and better use of our resources? So in the Code Cash program, it is small grants for homeowners. So these are not loans. These are just let's fix it and move on, and the neighbors will be happy, and you'll be happy, and the city will be happy. So it's for someone who has a property code violation, and then they have to meet 2 of the 3 criteria. So they either have to be socioeconomic disadvantaged, a senior or disability, or the violation itself presents a great risk to life safety issue, like let's fix this now, let's not wait. And under this program, there would be a 50-50 match for the cost of the repairs to correct the violation. So we want the property owner to have some investment or skin in the game on this, so they don't keep coming back to us probably, right? Reimbursements, we think a good starting place is $50 to up to $2,000 can help a lot of folks looking to get some quotes or materials receipt if it's something someone can do by themselves. We would like the work to be completed and inspected before we release our share of the funds. We would give preference to life safety repairs or those observed violations. And rental properties not eligible, single-family dwelling units only, so we're not talking about something that an HOA would be responsible for repairing or something like this. And because we have limited funds, they're not guaranteed first come, first serve on this program. So some examples of what we could use this for, updating smoke alarms, CO detectors, you know, those need to be working. Sometimes people can't afford those. Repairing decks and walkways, we see a lot of handrails that need repair, but somebody just doesn't fix it for whatever reason. Removing dead trees, that's a code violation, that's a safety issue. And repairing roofs, I know we had a situation a few years ago where someone's roof was practically caved in, and they had poor credit, they were seniors, so they were on fixed income, and all the equity that they had was in their home, but they couldn't qualify for a loan anywhere. So how does somebody like that, who has equity but can't get a loan and they don't have much money, fix the problem to keep them in their homes? I mean, it was quite the challenge. So demo of dilapidated structures. If someone has a pool, we see lots of pools kind of get filled in. They've outlived their useful life, haven't been maintained, and they become a safety hazard. Upgrading electrical panels, removing debris, you know, getting a bagster or a dumpster out to help someone clean up their yard, a few $100. Let's spend our resources there to help them rather than spending that few $100 on staff time to go out and enforce the code. So, and there's a few other things on this list that you can see, and there's many more examples that we have that we come across. So as I said when I started out, this is meant to be kind of a short, sweet, simple little grant program to help people out. Cost effective, we think it will keep some cases out of court. It'll help those that need it, help those that have economic barriers to be compliant. We certainly have those that need help. Maintain safety, that's what this is about, and certainly a better use of our resources and saving city attorney time, court time, inspectors' time. And it gets to the outcome that we want as quickly as possible, so resolving the violations. So that's our Code Cash program, and before I turn it over to Sarah to talk about programs 2 and 3, I will stand for any questions, and I will say our code enforcement supervisor coordinator, Chris Forsland, could not be here tonight, so I'm presenting his program on his behalf, so I just want to acknowledge that's his work here.
I think this is terrific and very exciting. One thing I would say is you excluded townhomes because of an HOA, but some HOAs require that the resident be responsible for the exterior repairs, and it's not always included in the HOA maintenance covenants. So I would say that you probably should look at that exception based upon the HOA.
Okay, thank you. We will do that.
Any other questions?
Okay?
Anyone from the public?
None from the public, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
I will switch
Can we
spots.
thank you?
One more comment on the HOA situation.
Yes.
A lot of the associations have deductibles that they push on to the individual homeowner. So if there's a $10,000 deductible for the association property, they can put that directly on the individual homeowner. So he would be responsible for up to $10,000 in that case if there was a $10,000 deductible. So even though it's a condo, they can push that to you as an individual.
Got it. The assessment, like an assessment? Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Got it, thank you. Okay, thank you, Madam
that's it.
Chair. I'll
Thank you.
turn it over to Ms. Arnold for program number 2.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
So the 2 programs that I have to talk with you about this evening are related to the feedback that you had provided as part of your housing plan, one of which was a direct lending program and the other of which was targeted programs to groups. So the first program I'll talk with you about is just a general home improvement loan program for Burnsville residents, and then the third program that I'll talk about after this one is targeted for seniors 66 and up, but also a home improvement deferred loan program. So the first program would be a revolving loan fund lending to residents of an amount up to $50,000 is the amount that we are proposing. So objectives with this program would be to, or the policy as a whole that we'll be creating for these programs would be to build awareness of the funding sources that are available to Burnsville residents, implementing that strategic plan goal. And the objective of being able to provide this service to our residents is that we maintain high-quality neighborhoods, and that we're able to provide this assistance, which is new for residents, for getting it from us at least, so that they can make these improvements and get the permits that they need for their projects. So some of the requirements of the loan program, so eligibility, 1 to 4 unit owner occupied property in Burnsville. So we have chosen that through some parameters of reviewing other cities across, mostly in the North Metro, or generally cities that participate in these types of programs, that townhome and condo units we would have be eligible for this program, but those under construction or held in trust or contract for deed would not be eligible. I can get into some of the reasons of why we landed on that if you're interested, but I will move on for now at least. And then generally the use of the funds for most interior or exterior improvements or maintenance or remodels. We would like, as part of the program, for at least one bid to be required to be provided from a licensed contractor. We would allow do-it-yourself work, so long as a materials list could be provided with the prices of what was needed to complete the project, if the homeowner were to do it themselves. The work would need to be completed within 180 days of closing. That is a similar parameter that you would see as part of the building code when you receive a permit. And then that the funds could not be used for debt service or recreation or luxury projects for the home. An example might be a pool, something like that for the backyard. So lending guidelines, what we've provided as part of the kind of proposed policy that's in your background report is what we put together after looking at some of our peer cities that offer similar programs through third party or whether they offer it through their own housing departments. At the end, I've got some questions for some feedback on if you are comfortable with what we're proposing, or if you, from your kind of knowledge and the work that you do, think that maybe something could be adjusted to better serve the residents of Burnsville. So we're proposing a lending program where the interest rate would be scaled and determined by income. So it would be a low interest revolving loan or direct lending between 1% and 3%. So the higher interest rate would be a higher income, and we would be calculating that and determining that by the percentage of area median income. The loan-to-value ratio would not exceed 100%. The debt-to-income ratio would be a maximum of 43%, which has been identified for us through conversations that that's generally market standard for the private lending market. Multiple loans per property could be allowed with this program since the maximum loan amount is $50,000. Let's say a homeowner in 2022 does the program and gets a $10,000 loan for a project, and then 7 years later they would like to apply for another loan for $12,000. That amount does not exceed the total $50,000, so that would be permitted under the program. The loans would be secured with a mortgage that's recorded with the property, tied to the property. And we do acknowledge that we would be working with a third-party servicer and that they may have their own underwriting guidelines as well for servicing the loans that we would like to provide. So the process, as we would see it, applications would be submitted to a third-party servicer. We would not ask for a down payment or matching funds for the loan program. So they would need to provide financial income, financial information, including their income, the debt that they currently hold, to that distributor. And then, as with the Code Cash program, the funds that we would be setting aside for the program would be first come, first serve for the different homeowners that would apply for it throughout the year, and then theoretically continue to be funded in budget years going forward. The projects, we would want to make sure that the permits would be required for the work that is done. If required, they must be obtained and inspected by a city inspector. If the work that they're doing as part of their home improvement project does not trigger a requirement for a building code, the third party could complete a post-installation inspection to ensure that the work is completed before releasing the funds. So some of the variables that we'd like to get some feedback on are these 4 items listed here that were also in your background report. So as a dollar amount, we've indicated a cap of $50,000. I did include in your background report a spreadsheet that has a comparison of some of the other communities that I researched and what programs that they had. And there were varying amounts. $50,000 is on the higher end of what other programs offered, with the intent of the program being home improvement, home remodels, maybe additions. We have put a cap of $50,000. What feedback might you have on something like that? Is that something that you would be supportive of in meeting the goals of maintaining a high value or increasing home values, things like that, as part of the goal of the housing program? Or is this something that may be lowered, or I don't know, any feedback?
I think the amount seems to be fine because it could cover a lot of projects. Is there any requirement, I didn't see it but in here, but that they contribute a certain amount to the project from their own funds?
Yeah, so there will be no matching or down payment required, yeah. So this would be the full amount. There would likely be a minimum amount, like the loan could be between, let's say, $2,000 and $50,000, but 50,000 is the max.
You mentioned the interest rate for the loan, and the lower interest rate would be, the ratio of income. The
Yes.
lower amount with the lower income, and the higher interest rate with the higher income, which is kind of, it's flipped. I wonder if, was there a consideration for the interest rate just being across the board, one rate?
As a flat rate,
Yeah.
there was a discussion of that. So right now, the formula, I'll say, that we're using is very similar to the city of Coon Rapids, who has a program, very, very similar to this. They have a number of housing programs that they implement at their city. And in their home improvement loan program, they have it scaled as determined by area median income as well. And they have ranges between, actually, I believe theirs is 1% and 4%. And their program is incredibly successful and has been funded by their city council for more than 10 years. And they have been able to distribute, on average, almost $400,000 per year to homeowners in their community. So we're kind of modeling after the programs that we've seen and heard from their staff have been very successful with their residents.
Sure.
We're open to a flat rate,
Oh.
I'll say. That's
Good.
Yes, but it's part of the questions too, that if you have feedback, we're open to it as part of our policy creation.
Good. Commissioner Farber.
Yes.
So some questions. Again, I like this program a lot as well. I'm okay with the 50,000, but part of that math for me needs to understand how much money the city is setting aside to make available, because 50,000 might be high if we're setting aside $100,000. So can you respond to that at all? And then I've got a couple more questions.
I may defer to Jenny on some budget questions.
Here's what I'll say. It's a very good question, Commissioner. We have set aside $100,000 for each of the last 2 years. So for sure, starting, and we have it in 2022, this budget coming from the Economic Development Funds. So we have $200,000 to start with. There is an opportunity to use other funds. We have some unused, unallocated TIF dollars of close to $1 million that we can use to be seed money for this. We also have the potential to use some other, what's the word I want to say, unrestricted dollar amounts, upwards of $500,000 from another source that the city has. There also is the federal ARPA dollars. We have $2 million that the council has not allocated of our $8 million allocation. Now, we cannot use that for rehab, for a loan program, but we can use that for a grant program. So would that come into the mix, where maybe half of it's a grant, or part of it's a grant and part of it's a loan? So there's some different options, and we're talking with Ellers, who we worked with to help create these plans, our financial advisors, on what those options may be. I believe we will be having this kind of discussion with the council about the additional funding either in December when we bring kind of these programs and the policies to them, and or in January at their all-day work session. So it has yet to be determined, but there is opportunity to have a kickstart of these programs if the council wants to use those dollars that way.
So thank you for that answer. I think that we need to be thinking about numbers of at least $1 million, if not more. And, you know, if you're helping 20 homes a year at 50,000, that's it. So I think part of it is, what does the staff feel like we need? How many homes are there that we need to be helping every year on average? And I'm sure there's a backlog as we put this program into place, and eventually it's going to hopefully even out. But I think it's a terrific program. I think it's just a matter of figuring out the impact. I do like the scaled interest rates. I think the interest rates, you know, they scale it based upon the ability to pay, but I think the interest rates are still very competitive. I also like the fact that it's sustainable. We can continue to put this money back into play over and over and over again, and that's really what we all should be thinking about, is sustainable programs that are gonna impact our community for the long term. The last thing I would say is that I like the 43%, by the way, for starters, and we could always go to 50%, but let's start conservatively and see if more people can participate and be safe about that money, so that that money is coming back into play. But the last thing is just always the policing of it all, and how do we do that so that we don't add more burden to staff? Because at 1 to 3% interest, it's not really giving us a lot of money to administer and add more staff. That's really not the intent. And so how do we police that? And probably the loophole I see is the do-it-yourselfers. So I think we should require them absolutely to have to pull a permit, and that permit to be inspected in order to tie it to the funds, because that's a process that's already in place and doesn't need to be replicated. But somehow there needs to be some accountability, I think, because if people can find a loophole, there always will be that 5% that will find a loophole. And to me, that seems like a way that we could get around that loophole, especially with do-it-yourselfers that would not be working with licensed contractors.
Commissioners, I will add to that, the Center for Energy and Environment, while we have not entered into any contracts with them for this, we do for our energy audit work. They administer this program on behalf of a lot of cities in the metro. So we've talked to them and gotten their costs and our expenses, which we think are very reasonable to administer the program. So we see staff's role in this, and your role, the council's role in creating the program, working through the policy. We do there could be a huge amount of people that respond to this off the get-go, and we could be out of money like that. We don't really want that either. We know that there's a balance there, but we do see this as a long-term investment, and at some point, we wouldn't have to put any more money into it because it will be self-funded with the paybacks. So we envision a third-party administrator. So our role is to create the program, market the program, change the program, but we will funnel everybody to this third party to apply. So it will be our program, and of course, we're funding it, but they're doing kind of all the underwriting, the details, the collection, putting the mortgages on people's deeds, that they're doing all of that on our behalf.
And do we get charged for that? So the question is, you know, we have a 1 to 3% profit margin.
Yes.
Does that profit margin cover the cost of the administration?
Yes, it would, and then there's like closing costs too on the loan. I think that helped cover that costs, and yeah, we could set the interest rate at 0 if we wanted to, but the fee is nominal for them to run the program and get it started.
I've worked with the CE on a couple of programs, and they are very efficient, and they're not in it to make money. In fact, that foundation is funded by the utility companies. So they're gonna keep the cost low as far as administration.
What are the underwriting standards that you would expect from the third-party underwriter or administrator?
Well, I will just say I have not gotten into that level of detail, Sarah. I don't know if you've got any more information on that from them specifically.
Not specifically with the people we've reached out to as possible third party yet. I don't have that information. Just notes that they may have their own. As we solidify the policy though, before anything is created and the program is officially running, we would have a contract in place where we would have access to that information.
My concern would be if we borrow up to 100% to someone with subprime credit, and then there's gonna be expense to try to get our money back.
Sure, which is why we're proposing the limit of 43% debt-to-income ratio. That's the industry standard. Some programs go up to 50%.
Is that debt to income, or is that monthly payments to total income? I think that might be monthly, like car payment, rent, or house payment.
Sure. I think that,
Rather than debt, I was confused with the debt, but I think that might be monthly
It's
payments.
the latter, the ability to pay. Right, that's what that gets to.
We have Commissioner Schmidt who is trying to weigh in. She has a question.
I wasn't sure that we covered what are the length of these loans and how variable is that for the homeowner's needs?
Yes, you're right that I didn't put that in the presentation. It is 15 years, that may be in your background report, so it'd be a 15-year term.
And then how is eligibility determined? So if you get a lot of applications for these, how are you gonna select, who can participate?
So it will be a first come, first served program. So the applications would come through to our third-party servicer and administrator, and we, as city staff, would not see individual applications as they come in.
Okay.
It would be reporting purposes for budget at the end of the year, but not something that we would have a day-to-day hand in.
Commissioner Anderson, did you have another question?
It was the same.
Okay. I have one last question, if I could. Jen, you mentioned something about marketing, and I was just wondering, how does the community members find out about the programs?
So that was one of the 4 strategies or objectives of the housing plan, right, was to market what we have. And we know we can do a better job there. And it's not just our programs, it's what else is out there for our homeowners. So we're looking to kind of brand our housing program, come up with a name for it, and kind of bundle everything, make things more prominent on our website to promote that. And maybe we do mailers, stuff in the utility bills, letting people know about not just this program, but all the other ones. So the other big program out there is the Minnesota Housing Fix-Up Fund that all of us have access to, really. And it's CEE administers this, so in our conversations with this, we don't want to compete with those other programs either, because we have limited funds. So if somebody can qualify for another program, go get that program. We're trying to come up with some programs here that there's a need and where we wouldn't be competing with other programs or the private sector. So that's why maybe having some lower interest rates, although right now everyone's pretty low, like you said, Jeff, but maybe longer terms, helping those maybe with a little higher debt-to-income ratio, something like that, where we know that there's a need. There's a reason why people aren't going out and fixing up their homes on the private market. I think it's not because they don't want to, it's probably because they don't qualify for funding for some reason or another. So, but there's a balance there of having too many loans in the rears, or we want people to succeed. We don't want them to fail when they come to us for help. We want this to be a good thing for them.
Absolutely.
And to add on that,
Commissioner Scislow? I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I just wanted to add on, we have the sliding scale with the interest rate. Maybe we could do that with a credit score and the total amount that we would loan out. So like, maybe we only loan out 100% to someone in a highest tier credit score, and maybe 90% for the middle tier and 80% equity for the lowest tier. Just a thought there. Because otherwise, again, if you loan out to a subprime lender 100% and they default, there's going to be a lot of costs involved in getting whatever's left over after the first lender gets paid.
Any other questions?
I could just share that one other perspective of people that this may really help would be those who are self-employed. We're seeing a huge change in employment and how people are leaving their jobs. And when you leave your job, it's very difficult to qualify for some of these loans. You may have spectacular credit, but if you're self-employed, it's going to take a long record of that new business before you can get some of your loans approved. So this would be a really prime example for people like that, where excellent candidates for credit, but not necessarily falling into some of the requirements at banks.
And I'll just make one last comment about maybe a wait list due to how much money that we have set aside for the programming. I'm wondering if in the future, if we have a number of people that we can't, provide the funding to, is there any thought given to a possible wait list?
Okay, that's a great comment.
Yeah. Commissioner Anderson?
Getting back to Ed's point about, have you checked with any of the other cities to see what kind of default they have on the loans that they do put out?
So that's actually on my to-do list, is in preparation for city council, that is gonna be something that I will have as part of their discussion on how they process it when it comes to that. But I do wanna kind of reiterate that the goal is, and the reason that we're proposing the scaled interest rates, it is to kind of get that targeted gap of people who maybe wouldn't normally qualify at market rate for a standard bank, but maybe they make more money and wouldn't qualify for CDBG. So the lower interest rate for making less than area median income is not so percentage low that they may qualify for a CDBG loan, but not so high that they couldn't qualify in the market. So it is meant to kind of fill that gap of someone who maybe couldn't meet a traditional loaning standard, but just a little bit off of the debt income ratio, and maybe they could, so.
Right. Any questions from the public?
None from the public, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yep, and so it seems like we've maybe covered the first two. The last two on this list are income limits and valuation cap. So we are not proposing an income limit cap in our current draft of the policy, but would provide a higher interest rate for those with incomes 150% higher than area median income. So we're asking, should the income to interest rate differentiate more between different incomes? Maybe that's a similar, maybe we're not doing a 1 to 3% scale, maybe we're doing a 1 to 3.5 or a 1 to 4, or should there be a maximum income cap? So if you were to make more than this percent of area median income, then you would not qualify for the program. And hand in hand in that is that we did see that some peer cities didn't have income caps, but a home valuation cap. So that varied, but as an example, a home valuation of higher than $400,000, then they would not be able to qualify for the program. So should that be something that is considered, and at what amount? Should there be a valuation cap or an income cap or both?
I'm sure that there's probably something we're not thinking about, but I think to be fair to all, we probably should just let it be open.
All right.
Yeah. Because even though you could make a large income, you might be spending at your income level, right? So, Commissioner.
I would agree with that. You know, I think of a business person, and think of a business person that owned, I don't know, a wedding venue, and all of a sudden COVID happened. So they go from a good income potentially to not having a good income. So because they had a good income, they maybe live in a very nice home, and all of a sudden they have very little money coming in, and yet they need a program like this. So I would, there's lots of different reasons. Somebody passes away in the family that was the main wage earner, and they made a very good income, and now they don't have that income. There are a lot of reasons for it, so I wouldn't put a limit on it either.
I could see some people taking advantage of the low interest rates. I mean, if I saw it and if I needed the money, whether I needed it or not, it might be a good place to, it'd be the best place to borrow I could think of.
Is there an application deadline, or I know you said it was first come, first serve, and kind of once those funds are gone, they're gone, but I mean, could there be any consideration to having, you have a deadline application process, everything has to be in by this date, and then you're making a selection based on maybe those it could best help, to your point of, someone maybe trying to take advantage of a low interest rate that is a high income wage earner and just says, hey, if I can get a 3% loan, I'm gonna do it. But you might have someone who could really benefit from that lower interest rate and those funds. So maybe doing it as more of an application process versus, all the funds are used up and it's gone.
So that hasn't been considered. That's an interesting thought. I think the idea was that it would be open year round, and that as we, as staff, are communicating with, maybe it's something, not necessarily for the code cash type of a thing, but maybe someone really needs to do some sort of improvement work to their property and they don't feel that they can afford it, and they're talking to us and asking us what they can do. We could say, well, here's a program that we have that we can direct you to apply for, and maybe you would qualify for that. So I would say that as staff in building inspections and in planning and economic development, we all hear from residents all the time about what they're working on and how can they get it done. So we'd like to have it open year round. We don't know what kind of response we're going to get to it. If we are going to run out as soon as the program opens, then maybe we learn for when we do get more funds available and for the next year on how we'd like to implement it. So it will be a learning curve to the program. But the idea is that we want to be able to direct people to it throughout the year who need it.
Commissioner Anderson?
I think that, it might be a hybrid. When you first open it up, you might say, for the first 2 months, apply, and then we're gonna make decisions after that. But then, if you have money left, leave it open. But just so that there's a chance for everybody to get involved in the beginning, where there might be an oversubscription, that you would, allow for a selection.
I think your point was trying to be like, homeowners don't know when they want to make these changes to their home, so it's just up in the air when they want to make these updates. So if you did it like once or twice a year, that would kind of alleviate people who maybe next month determine, okay, I need to do this, and where can I go apply for that? So, but then they'd have to wait, and especially for something as critical as a roof or something, that might not be good. Yeah.
Maybe there's an allocation for emergency type projects, such as a failing roof type scenario, and then more of a just basic improvement. I don't know.
You mean like something that would take precedence over different types of?
Correct, yeah. So maybe saying there's $500,000 or whatever annually for emergency repairs, and that's open year round. But then, someone who wants to replace their siding because it's getting worn and tired, and maybe it's not a safety issue, or it's just ugly. They could apply by March 15th and be okay with that. If they get accepted, then they can get a contractor on board and then go forward with repairs over the summer.
So actually, it's a really good point. So some of the communities that I looked into, they did have a required built-in visit from their third party. In the program that I talked to, in that case, it was CE, and they would send out an advisor to the property to review and prioritize emergency or needed work over others. Okay. So their intent of their program was to guide people more towards general maintenance and stuff that would boost property values in the city.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different cities are approaching it different ways, and that is one way that we saw some communities approaching that issue.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think no one has a question right now, so.
Doesn't sound like it. All right, I'll move on to another loan program. So the second program that I'll be talking with you about is a senior deferred loan. So it would be a lending program for Burnsville residents age 66 and up to assist with housing maintenance and improvements. And so this program would function very similarly to the one that we've just discussed, but it would be a deferred loan. So think 0% interest rate and an age limit. And this comes from the housing plan and the goals to target more specific diversity in households in the city, whether that is that your ethnicity group or age, and in this case, this is an age-oriented program similar to other communities in the metro. So the objective of this program would be to supplement the existing programs that are available from, as Jenny mentioned, there are programs that are offered, the state Minnesota Fix-Up Fund, the CDBG funds through the Dakota County CDA, there's private market. So the intent is for this deferred loan program to be supplemental to somebody that may be on the wait list for CDBG. So there would be similar property eligibility for 1 to 4 units owner occupied within the city, and similar credit and loan guidelines, but that it would be highly focused on the senior population in the city of Burnsville and housing maintenance and repair focused. So there would be potentially the ability for that home visit as part of this program to identify something that may be more urgent, or think furnace or roof or things like that, the examples that you had listed. So the program details for this would be an income cap at or below area median income. So the intent is that this may be somebody who would make more than the maximum cap for the CDBG fund, but it is the intent is for those that may be on a fixed income within the city that have equity in their home, but may not have that steady income coming in every month that could supplement a home improvement project of a larger scale. So in this case, there would be no monthly payments. 0% interest rates would be deferred 30 years with forgiveness. So maximum loan amount of $15,000, and then so the repayment would be deferred until the time of a future sale or when no longer owner occupied as the primary residence, or after that 30-year period, there is the ability for it to be forgiven. So the debt income ratio in this type of application situation would be not applicable. And recreational improvements or funds to pay down existing debt would not be eligible as part of the program. So just a couple of variables to get some feedback on for this one would be related to do-it-yourself work, should that be permitted under the deferred loan program? And then the same question about the valuation cap. So I did want to note with the do-it-yourself work, in the other programs that we saw in the metro, generally they were not permitted for it to be a do-it-yourself project. It would require a bid, at least one bid from a licensed contractor to perform the work. Since the focus was on maintenance and life, health, safety issues, that is why that was put in. So we're just asking the question of that to be included in the policy, and then the same question on a home valuation cap, if that is something that we should consider including in the policy for the same reasons, in that the goal of the program is to incorporate or encourage people to be able to do the home improvement projects that would increase home value in the city, and if your home has a higher value, then that objective has been completed. So open for feedback.
I'll speak. I don't think it should be closed just to licensed contractors. And the reason being, if we're going to permit it, you might have seniors who, they might have skills and abilities. They might be able to do some of that work. Their skills are laying dormant because they don't have an opportunity to do some of this work. So I think it should be open, especially if you're going to permit it and it has to undergo, some type of accountability in that way. So it could be a project that they're entertaining, something that makes them feel like they're giving back to, or enjoying doing the work. So I think it should be open, not just to licensed contractors. Anyone else?
There may have family members too that can help in that case because of their age.
That's material expense then.
Yeah.
And it's a minimal amount. You're not talking 50,000 like the other. This is 15,000. So.
And I think if you do require a permit, then there's some accountability there. You could even attach a little bit more by saying they're required to pull a permit and to provide architectural drawings. You could do something like that to just maybe put a little bit more teeth behind it. The other thing is that it talks about it no longer owner occupied, that it would be due, but I think about the situation of a death where all of a sudden the family inherits a home. And according to this, it would be due at that point because that person is no longer the owner occupant. But I'm not sure that's a fair burden on the family if they don't have the capacity to pay. I think it should continue as a lien or some sort that would carry with the property or something. So I think we need to protect against that kind of a situation. I don't know how I feel about 0% interest either.
For seniors, though.
I know for seniors, but even a low interest rate helps it to continue to be sustainable. Because I think we're kidding ourselves if we think there's no cost to manage some of this and no burden on the staff. There's going to be. And it'd be nice to at least try to get a little bit to compensate for some of those unknown costs even that we're going to have, because I guarantee there's going to be some unknown costs.
Yeah, I guess that would be my argument for requiring a licensed contractor, or at least, some kind of permitting process, is because if you are going to allow someone to have a 0% interest loan and defer it for, up to 30 years, it sounds like, or as long as the person's living in there, you want to make sure that the improvement is done as good quality work and is going to bring value and improvement to the home. And having it just be an open-ended DIY option, I think, doesn't provide the city with those protections. So either just requiring that there has to be permits pulled and everything has to be inspected to ensure quality of work, or that it needs to be performed by a licensed contractor.
If we're saying 30 years, though, I think that the ideology behind it is that the homeowner will stay and reside there. And in the unfortunate event someone passes away, it sounds to me like the thought that went into providing these loans wasn't necessarily to hurry up and reclaim the funds. It was actually just to get the work done in the home, so it's livable.
That's correct.
Yeah. I just
Yeah,
wanted
no,
to-
I get that point, but at some point, you know, either the city is gonna collect at the time of the home is, the time this person passes, or they sell the home, so you just wanna ensure that the work that was done was of good quality and worth the money given.
Is there a way to streamline the inspection process so they don't have to go through the trouble of getting a permit and something like that? I don't know, hybrid inspection?
Under the building code, no, it would definitely be a typical process for a building permit. And even if, I can't think of very many improvements that wouldn't require a building permit. And so even in that case, the third-party servicer would have a final inspection to see that the work was done in order for the funds to be released.
Thinking like
So,
hanging a door or putting in a new window.
so just different things that may, but no matter what, if it was something that didn't trigger the building code, it would still trigger, it would have to be inspected to ensure that the project was complete to get the funds. So there would always be some sort of inspection.
And we would file a lien against the property. So maybe we could have it payable upon settlement of the estate, which is normally about a year, I would think.
That may be what would be in the guidelines for our servicer as to how that is processed. And that's the research component that I haven't completed yet.
We have Commissioner Schmidt who has a question.
I wanted to speak specifically to the question of a home valuation cap. For this program and actually for the previous program, I would urge away from a concrete dollar amount when we've seen such volatility to home prices. If you declare a certain dollar amount, I mean, my house jumped $100,000 in the last 18 months. So you close that gap really quickly. I would say if a value cap were listed, maybe more like a, percentage of the top amount, or, something relative home values to the community, as opposed to a concrete, this exact dollar amount or less, because that really changes over time.
And then is it based off the taxable home value or the market value? What's the assessment there?
I'm wondering if I actually have that in my notes. There is a specific number where that comes from, and it would be appraisal within the last year, or I think taxable value from the most recent tax year, I think is what it is. I think it's in my background, but if it's not, I'll find it. So.
Yeah, I think it's a more enduring program if you're less concrete while still being clear about if you want a boundary of not the top, home values in our community relative to the overall home prices. That's gonna be a longer lasting policy.
Thank you.
So something like maybe 200% of the area market value.
Right, however you wanna do it, or like,
It's floating.
right, exactly, because the value of homes changes so much that, you want it to be a useful number for a long time,
If you use the tax value, that's different from the market value, but for simplicity purposes, if you use, like, for example, again, 200% of the area market value. So if the area market value is 250,000, you could do it up for people up to homes that are 500,000 on their tax statement, maybe, is something, or 150%.
And then in 5 years, if that's changed a certain amount by defining it in this different way, then it continues to be able to be calculated dynamically.
Okay. is helpful, and I've got that down. And I'd say that that would be very comparable to what we're doing with the percent of area median income for interest rates, and that we're trying to be flexible to the community as that changes annually. What is our area median income, and making sure that we're, the intent of the program for our low-income residents and those that may not qualify normally. So this is good, and I believe that is my last slide. So any final comments,
We have
questions?
a question or statement from
Oh.
Commissioner Anderson.
All right.
You know, I don't know that I would necessarily make the 66 plus one forgivable loan. I would just leave it as a lien on the property, and when it's sold, then it would be paid off. Because then you've got the funds coming back that can be used for other people rather than.
I agree with that.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, she was saying that it could potentially be forgivable.
Any further questions?
Well, I just want to add, these will be going to the council at their next work session, and we'll get some additional information, like Sarah said, that we'll bring forward to them. We plan to have these draft policies reviewed by CEE, should they be our underwriter, just to have them take a look at it and make sure we're not missing anything from the get-go too. So we will send you the invite to the council work session if you want to join us on the discussion. So, thank you.
Commissioner LaFleur?
I was just going to say, these programs are outstanding. And I think, we've been talking about things like this for a while, and kudos to the administration for putting it together, staff. Really appreciate it. I think one of the things you're probably hearing across the commission tonight is we really desire to make these programs sustainable so they can continue to replicate themselves down the road. And if we just give the money away, that's not going to be possible. So whatever we can do to make them sustainable so we can have prolonged impact on the community in a positive way, it would very much, I think, be in line with what we're thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah and Jenny. Okay, next on the agenda, we have Regina Dean, the Assistant Community Development Director for the city, and she will provide a presentation of the item and overview and background report for zoning and subdivision code check-in.
Good evening, Chair, members of the commission. So this is a general overview. I don't think I've done a presentation on what we're doing from a zoning code perspective. I've kind of fed information via email, but this is I think the first presentation that we've done. So just to familiarize the public and yourselves, City Council gave us the direction to do a full city code update. And there is a task force that is looking at the full city code minus Title 10 and 11 of the city code. So Title 10 is our zoning code, and Title 11 is our subdivision. And so there is state law that talks about if you have a planning commission, that they're kind of the governing body that oversees zoning and land use. So that's why the planning commission is specifically overseeing the zoning code update and the subdivision sections. So we have involved the code task force and the Economic Development Commission specifically have sent sections of the city code drafts and red lines for review and comment, and then we're sending that information to the Planning Commission for their kind of decision and recommendation to City Council. We'll be coming to you at different points, for example, now with single-family residential and multifamily residential, and then in the future in 2022, business and industrial, our mixed-use sections, transit-oriented development, and then other areas of the code as well. But for today, we'll be focusing on single-family and multifamily residential. Anyway, getting back to my bullet points here, we do have a contract. We're working specifically with WSB. They're a consultant firm, and they're our main point of contact that's keeping us on track for reviewing the code update, zoning code update. We also have city staff that are involved in, again, the different commissions that are weighing in, and members of the public as well. We did have a kickoff with the Planning Commission back in April of 2021. That's when we kind of laid out the plan that WSB had proposed, talking about timelines and public engagement strategies and how we would get to kind of the final product. And did a lot of behind-the-scenes work. So summer 2021, we officially started public engagement. We're out at public events like Party on the Plaza, the Fire Muster, gathering information in person. There was a survey that was posted online and sent out to the public, posted on social media. And again, we have kind of those staff review of drafts and our commission review of those draft red lines as well. In August of 2021, that's when you specifically got our first round of single family and R1A sections of the code, and then later that month, I believe you received the multifamily sections for review and any comment. And then in September and October, we presented that information to the Planning Commission. And then last night, we took that red line draft to the City Council and wanted an opportunity to check in with them to see, are we heading in the right direction? Is this what you envisioned as being kind of the right track for these sections of the code? And overall, they were satisfied with the changes. They did have some comments on some various sections, but advised that the next step would take that back to, as ordinance format, to the Planning Commission with some minor modifications, and then ultimately it will be a public hearing and then City Council for adoption. So that's just the single-family, multifamily sections. There's going to be more that will be presented in the future and work its way through the process. I think we said this would be about an 18-month process to begin with. It will probably be a lot longer than that based off of the current track. As I had mentioned, we kicked this off in April of 2021, and you're barely seeing that first kind of grouping of information. Again, I talked about public engagement, what we've done just to get the community involved. It's kind of dry information, I think, unless you're, a lot of people aren't in the zoning code on a day-to-day basis, and it can be kind of confusing and cumbersome to work through. And we do have an ultimate goal that will streamline and make things more plain language and more user-friendly. But we wanted to get the public's feedback on what they would like to see changed potentially with our city code. So we did have a survey that was sent out that was more of a visual preference survey. So instead of saying section 10-7- whatever, like what do you think about this line code, it was a picture of a couple of houses with oversized garage doors. And do you like this or not like it? And people kind of fell in the middle. Or driveway widths. Do you like this driveway width, or this driveway width, and pictorial. And so people could kind of select, oh, I don't have a preference, I don't care, I care. We did that with landscaping and some other questions as well. We also asked people how long they plan to stay in Burnsville. We asked if they've ever gone through a permitting process and they triggered a conditional use permit or a variance request. What was your experience like? The results were, I would say, very in the middle for most of the questions. It wasn't like, wow, there's really an issue out there. People seem to be pretty satisfied with what's in their neighborhood and what, and just comfortable with their properties and surroundings. So we didn't make a whole lot of dramatic changes that you'll see in the city code, red lines that were in your packet kind of as attachments. But I will summarize the proposed changes that we did do that are in the red lines. We added some consistent language and terminology between chapters. So there were, right now there's areas that say structure, building, and so
like, what's the difference between a building and a structure? So we're just gonna go with, I forget what we're going with exactly. I'd have to look at, for example, if we said structure, and building, let's just stick with building, or let's just stick with structure. Again, I can't remember exactly what we landed on, but let's just land on one same terminology throughout the entire code. We also, instead of having uses listed in kind of just right now, we say permitted uses, and I'll use more of a business example, but we say like art studio, gallery, pet shop, pet supply shop, baking supply shop, and it's just like this big long laundry list. We're going to group things into a table which say retail or commercial, or just to kind of group things together. We're planning on doing that, as well as taking that laundry list of words out and putting them in a table. So we think it'll be more user-friendly, as well as dimension requirements. They're kind of spelled out in Word format in each chapter. So we're planning to do a table as well. We are proposing some exceptions for front, side, and rear yard setbacks to allow some expansion of structures without having to go through a variance process, for example, for additions to homes. We're also proposing to eliminate a basement or cellar requirement for single-family homes. Right now, we do require a basement for single-family. We don't require it for townhomes.
Right.
And we checked with the building code and with the state requirements, and technically you don't need a basement or cellar for a single-family home. So we're gonna eliminate that, that's proposed. We also wanna bring flexibility to the roof type and roof materials that are allowed. So right now, we don't allow flat roofs for single-family homes, but they could be very contemporary and very in right now, or even if you want a portion of your home to have a flat roof, maybe an entry or something, that's not allowed. So we do want to amend the code to allow flat roofs. I don't think we're going to see a ton of them just because Burnsville's so built out, but there may be a remodel here and there where someone wants to incorporate something a little fun. And then materials, we have a specific provision in our code that says you can't have exposed metal fasteners if you have a standing seam roof or a metal roof. So we're proposing to eliminate that requirement, or that prohibition, should I say. So now you'll be able to have exposed fasteners. What we found is that many cities don't even regulate in their zoning code roof materials. It simply meet the building code. And there is one city in kind of our market cities that we reach out to that still prohibits them, but that's kind of the anomaly, I guess. And then we're proposing to combine the current R2 and R3A zoning districts. So R2 is currently what I would call our duplex zoning district, but we're proposing to combine it with our current R3A, and which is primarily our townhouse zoning district. They're both medium density, but we're proposing to combine the two. And then we'll do some renumbering. And then R3D, which is our manufactured home section of our zoning code, we're proposing to just rename to R4. And just overall, in our multifamily section of our city code, we have, it's currently called special requirements for multifamily mix. And we're gonna rename, we're not gonna call it special anymore, but we are, one of the things I do wanna point out,
is that we want to make some of the language more plain language in our architectural standards. So right now, it's confusing to determine like what the content even means. And so we're proposing to put some percentages and instead of vague language that we have, like right now we talk about your material shall be aesthetically attractive, and like what does that mean? So we're striking that and instead saying it needs to be high quality materials. Here's a percentage that you need to have of the high quality materials, and leaving it up to the developer or the property owner to decide how to use that. And again, taking out that kind of, I would say, like fluff language, and making it easier to understand, like what does attractive mean? It means something different to everybody. So next steps, we do plan to take the single family and multifamily and put it into actual ordinance format, bring that before the Planning Commission likely in January. And then it will go to City Council after they take action for final adoption and codification for just those chapters. And then we are at a staff level editing our business and industrial sections of our city code right now. It's a heavy lift. We also plan to do more engagement with you as a commission specifically, and with the Chamber of Commerce and some focus groups, various property owner, business owners within the city to get their feedback. We're also going to post this on the website, and then it will go to the Planning Commission for their homework and first review discussion. And then we will have a check-in opportunity with the council. Okay, here's what we heard from the community. Here's what we heard from the commissions, the task force. Are you on board with what's the red lines, what's been changed? And then those sections will then go back to Planning Commission and then council. So that's kind of the format that we're using right now. And these are all the other chapters that will be before our various commissions. So some are pretty minor. For example, the mining chapter or the parks chapter are very short. Like we'll get through those fast. But then the definitions are general regulations. So pretty, I guess, dense, yeah. There's a lot of information, especially in general regulations, that will probably take some time to sort through and get some good feedback on, and so more to come. We do have a request, if you had the opportunity to look at the red lines. I know you had a kind of a first look back in August. I apologize to our new commission member. You probably didn't receive that or weren't on the email list, obviously back in August, pre-appointment. But if anyone has feedback on single family and multifamily residential, there still is opportunity for us to incorporate those comments now. And of course, it will be a public hearing, so that will be open to the public as well to provide any kind of last minute feedback. And then if you have had the opportunity to just kind of at your own look at business, commercial, industrial, and have some kind of like preview comments you want to provide, we would welcome those as well. Totally understand that you haven't received those officially, so if you're not prepared with that information tonight, that's okay too. But welcome any comments or feedback.
Am I crazy, or when we got this earlier in the year, did we have different language, more like single unit, multi-unit versus single family, multifamily? Or am I totally imagining that?
We do reference things like apartment unit, and some sections of the code, we want to switch to just a multifamily instead of apartment, or condo, because that gives indication from a zoning standpoint that it's like owner occupied versus rental. But I believe it probably said single family, or one family agriculture. Maybe I'm using the wrong terminology myself, I apologize.
It's been a while since I first looked at it, but I thought in my mind it was all units, which made sense to me.
This is, in my opinion, really heavy lifting, and I kudos to the people that are spending the energy behind this, because it takes a special person to do this. I do think after you're all done, you should go to one of our state legislators and ask them to submit a bill to standardize all the coding across the state and all the coding across the country, because for the life of me, I don't understand why this is not standardized and why it's different in every city. It frustrates me.
There's some opinions about that, one way or the other, one way or the other.
Any questions?
Maybe if they worked off the same set of definitions, it might be closer.
Right.
As soon as you said that, I thought lobbyists. Anyone else have any questions?
Well, I'll continue to email you homework to take a look at, and we will have more engagement as we get to more of the business industrial sections. As economic development body, we see you as having that strong voice for our business community as well. So really thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
We didn't have anybody from the public weigh in?
None from the public.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have Beth. She's going to give us a presentation on Economic Development Strategic Plan Update. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here tonight, Commissioners. You've taken in a lot of information, so I will try to be concise with my updates tonight. Our first goal is ensuring the sustainability of the Burnsville Shopping Center and County Road 42 corridor. So a previous update was that the Burnsville Center was in for review and approval by City Council. They have approved the replat. And so an example of what the final plat is close to look like is shown on your screens. And shown additionally on there is the future Aldrich Avenue right-of-way that we acquired through this replat. And in conjunction with that, we are currently looking for City Council's approval next week for us to apply for a deed host grant to allow pre-planned design for that future road extension and multimodal improvements that could be related to that.
Did the Sears owner get involved in that, since it probably goes through their building?
So the mall owner was only able to dedicate the right-of-way on the property that they own, but Sears is aware of our Center Village vision and the proposed roadway, and so they would be a partner in the future as development continues to occur. We are continuing to try to improve the image of the school district and the city. So October was Manufacturing Month. We had different social media posts that we did throughout the month, and then we did partner with Landmark Creations, Showcraft, Permac Industries, and the school district on their Pathways program. And we produced a video which highlighted what each of their businesses or programs does here in Burnsville. And how that they're an asset to the city. We showcased that at a chamber morning coffee break that the city hosted in partnership with the chamber. And that video was very well received. So if you haven't seen it on social media or little clips of it floating around, it is located on our economic development page on our website. So I do encourage you to check that out. Because we have a lot of great manufacturing businesses here in Burnsville, and the Pathways program is assisting in facilitating manufacturing careers as well. development does continue within Heart of the City. We are continuing with the design framework update, and public engagement is continuing to occur. It is still continued, or anticipated completion is spring of next year. So enhancing and building awareness around the city's existing housing and commercial programs. We heard some great updates from Jenny and Sarah tonight. So that's very exciting. We've also continued our partnership with the Chamber on our Grow Minnesota visits. So we have completed 11 so far this year. We have a couple more scheduled for next week. We've had 6 ribbon cuttings.
Wow.
And our Center for Energy and Environment Partnership continues to grow. So we have pushed this out recently on social media, and since our last update, we're up to over 63 visits and 9 rebates for Burnsville residents specifically. So this program has been an asset to the community. It's a partnership, so it's a shared cost, half and half between the resident and then funding that comes from the city. So residents are able to apply for that and have an evaluation done on their home by the CEE.
Has the CE told you how much of an increase that is over previous years?
So the program rolled out this year, was our first year that we signed the contract with them, so we would be able to provide continued updates for that, or to you rather, over the course of our partnership with them. And there is information comparing us to other cities who also participate in this program. So as an example, Minneapolis is a very heavy user. I believe that they've been in partnership for longer, so obviously their visits are much higher than ours. But we are pleased with the progress that we've made thus far this year for the residents. We also have OpenGov, so that's our new permitting system that we have rolled out. It's online permitting, so residents can apply for permits, businesses, contractors. You can apply for a sign permit as an example online that I would review and approve. So you're able to communicate between the applicant and staff directly in that system. You can pay for your permit online, and then once payment is received, the permit is automatically issued. So you're able to print or save that for your own records. So it's a streamlined process. We've received good feedback from the community thus far. And we're just continuing to work out bugs as we find them.
Yeah, I had my first experience with that just this week.
Excellent.
Yeah, I got an update for my roof permit.
Okay.
It was finalized, and I was like, oh, okay. So
Great.
any movement that happens with your permit, you just get an email.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, so it's awesome.
And as a homeowner, then you'd be able to log in to see your history. And similar for contractors, they can see all of their active permits. And it's kind of a more centralized location for people to use it, so.
Yeah, it's like, it takes the mystery out of not knowing what's happening with your permit. You actually can stay pretty current whatever's happening, so I
Yes,
think
yep.
it's good for that, yeah.
Yeah, it shows where you are in the review status, or if your inspection is coming next, or what the next step in the process is, or if you see that it's still in staff queue for review, you can send them a message directly in there to ask what the delay is, what's going on. So it's, for me personally, it's been very positive for signs, so.
Yeah, and we've been talking about permitting all night, so, you know, for people who have to be permitted for the work that they are going to invest in their home, I mean, there it is right there. Just
Yep.
get it online in an email, so I think it's a great tool.
Absolutely. We are continuing the city's position as a regional destination. So you'll see here we have a pyramid of hidden gems boxes that we recently gave out at the Halloween to Go event. So the boxes were very well received. So this was a paid event that people could register for. You drove on the trail through Lac Lavon Park. The kids were provided candy, and the boxes were intended to be a gift for parents. So people were excited to receive those. Parents were excited to get something while the kids were getting all of their candy. So it was a way for us to reach a different group of people that maybe hadn't been exposed to the Hidden Gems boxes, and hopefully will find value in the information that we provided. So as a reminder, we include information from the city, the chamber, Experience Burnsville, and the school district. So it kind of highlights our 4 partners here in Burnsville. On that same note, we are partnering with the Chamber and Experience Burnsville for our Eat, Drink, and Buy Local promotion that will be kicking off the week of Thanksgiving. So we will be providing toolkits to businesses with window clings, gift tags. We'll have some signage around the city just to encourage people to eat, drink, and buy local during the holiday season, and that promotion will run through the end of the year. Businesses, restaurants, retail establishments are able to submit deals to Experience Burnsville and the Chamber, and there will be landing pages for that information. So keep an eye out for additional information on that.
Beth, do you mean through the end of 2022 or just 2021?
Through the end of 2021.
Okay.
Thank you. And then the other photo here, myself and the mayor attended the 8th annual South of the River Real Estate Summit. So that is an event that's hosted in Dakota County for all of the cities in Dakota County. And you could present on the development or different things that you have going on. This year we chose to do a video, which was well received. So we highlighted some recent development projects. We had the developers provide some feedback on how it was to work with city staff and how they feel about Burnsville. So that video is also located on our economic development webpage, and it would be worth a watch if you haven't seen it yet. And then just finally some updates tonight. So you all had provided feedback to us indicating that you wanted more performance metrics on where we are in the economic development strategic plan. So we have a document that we provide to City Council on measurables for our strategic plan. So that was included in your background tonight. I won't go into huge detail, but if you do have questions on it, I'm happy to try and answer those as best I can. And then additionally, Regina presented on city code and zoning code updates. As she mentioned, we are currently reviewing the business and industrial sections. And so staff has been circulating comments this week pretty heavily. So my usual plug to check out the development map often. Our department is proud of this map, and we do keep it up to date with all the development projects that we have going on. And as they move along through the process of proposed, approved, under construction, and completed. You were sent out information on optional ULI training. Urban Land Institute will be providing training on December 17th. So if you are interested and if you haven't RSVP'd to Kevin, our department assistant, I encourage you to do so. We would need that RSVP, I believe, by next week, the 15th. So just keep that in mind if that's something that you would like to participate in. If not, our next meeting will be January 12th. Stand for any questions.
Seeing no questions, I want to say thank you for the updates. And if we can get, at this time, if we could request, I'd like to request an adjournment for our November 10th commission meeting.
I move to adjourn.
Commissioner Schmidt, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Jansen? And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.